All right, listeners, ready to dive into something a little different today. We're taking a close look at a spec sheet.
Ooh, exciting.
Well, maybe not exciting for everyone, but trust me on this one.
Okay.
It's for a display, an 8-inch one called the AB080W200-J6.
An 8-inch display, huh?
Yeah. And it's not your typical TV screen or anything.
Hmm.
This one's built for some serious work. We're talking industrial grade stuff.
Oh, I see. So like factories and things?
That's the idea.
Interesting.
And the cool thing is, just by looking at the specs, we can figure out exactly what kind of action it can handle.
Oh, I like that, like being a detective.
Exactly. We're going to be like digital detectives.
Sounds fun.
So the specs mention things like ultra-thin bezels
Okay.
and an IP65 rating.
IP65.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a secret code.
It does.
We'll have to decode that one.
Definitely.
And it's compatible with like a crazy amount of industry software.
So it's meant for professionals.
Yeah, this is not a display for watching Netflix on your couch.
Got it.
But before we get too deep into all the details, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What kind of device are we actually dealing with here? What's the big picture?
All right. So if we look at the product at glance section, it's pretty straightforward. It's an 8-inch TFT LCD display.
Right.
Model AB082-200-J6.
Catchy name.
But the product reliability parameters section is where it gets interesting.
Ooh, okay.
Talking about wide temperature ranges, vibration protection, impact protection. This display is designed to survive in some pretty harsh conditions.
So it's more than just a screen.
Right, it's like a ruggedized computer built into a display.
Okay, and that IP65 rating we mentioned before, what does that actually mean?
That's the key to its ruggedness.
Okay.
IP stands for ingress protection.
I see.
And IP65 means this display is totally sealed off from dust.
No dust getting in there.
Nope, and it can withstand water jets from any direction.
Wow, water jets.
Yet we're talking industrial grade durability.
Okay, color me impressed. But let's get down to the nuts and bolts now.
Okay.
What kind of horsepower are we working with here?
So the hardware configuration section tells us it's running an Intel Celeron J6 4-tool processor.
Intel Celeron, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's not the fastest processor out there,
Okay.
but a quad-core processor at 2.0 gigahertz is still pretty decent.
So enough to handle some demanding tasks.
Definitely. Think data crunching, running specialized software,
Okay.
controlling other devices, things like that.
That's like a mini powerhouse tucked behind the screen.
Yeah, and they've given it plenty of memory and storage, too.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Okay, so 8 GB of RAM.
What GGB? Not bad.
And you can upgrade that to 16 GB if you need more.
Wow.
And for storage, it comes with a 256 GB SSD.
Solid state drive. Nice.
And there's also options for larger SSDs or even a hard drive.
So plenty of storage space.
Yep, this display is ready to handle some serious data.
Now, one thing that caught my eye in the specs was the wide voltage support.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
It says 12V to 36V. What's the significance of that?
That's a big deal for industrial environments.
Okay.
It means you can power this display from a variety of sources.
I see.
You're not limited to just one type of power outlet.
So more flexibility in different setups?
Absolutely. Super practical in a factory or a remote location.
All right, so we've established this thing is built like a tank. It's got a decent brain.
Yeah.
And it's not picky about its power source.
Not big at all.
What about connecting it to the outside world?
Well, get ready for a long list.
Got.
The interface parameters section is packed with ports.
Let's hear it.
VGA, HDMI, LAN.
A LAN for networking.
Yes, and not just one, but 2 LAN ports.
2.
We've also got USB 2.0 and 3.0, audio in and out,
Okay.
RS-232 COM, and they even threw in a SIM card slot.
Wow. It's like they wanted to make sure you could connect this display to anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
But why 2 LAN ports? Isn't one enough?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Having 2 LAN ports, one for 1,000 MVPs and the other for 100 MVPs,
Okay.
it's just some interesting possibilities.
Like what?
It could be for redundancy. So if one connection fails, you have a backup.
That's smart.
Or it could be for connecting to different types of networks simultaneously.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe one port is for a high-speed internal network and the other connects to a slower external network.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it adds another layer of flexibility and reliability.
And speaking of impressive, did you notice the HDMI port supports 4K output?
Oh, that is interesting.
Right.
Especially since the display itself is only 1 on 24 by 768.
Yeah, so you could connect it to a much larger, higher resolution external monitor
Exactly. Maybe for situations where you need to showcase something on a bigger screen.
while still using the smaller, ruggedized display for the main interface.
That's a good point.
Okay, so let's recap what we've learned so far.
Right.
We're dealing with a tough display
Cuff his nails.
that can handle dust, water, and rough handling.
Yep.
It's got enough processing power and memory to run demanding applications. And it's incredibly versatile when it comes to power sources and connectivity.
Definitely a multi-talented display.
But what exactly are those applications?
That's the big question, isn't it?
We know it's not for Netflix.
Right.
But where would this display actually be used?
Oh, that's the mystery we need to solve.
All right, let's put on our detective hats and see if we can crack this case.
Let's do it. You know, it's amazing what we can figure out just from these specs.
I know, right? It's like we're building this picture in our minds.
Exactly, even though we haven't actually seen the device.
And speaking of pictures, the spec sheet actually gives us the physical dimensions.
Oh, let's see.
It's about 11.5 inches wide, 7.6 inches tall, and a little over 2 inches deep.
So not exactly pocket-sized,
No, definitely not.
but remember, this is meant to be embedded probably into some kind of machinery.
Right, or a control panel.
They even give us the exact dimensions for installation.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, it's designed for a smug and secure fit.
Makes sense considering it might be subjected to vibrations and stuff.
Exactly.
And they've even included a diagram showing where all the ports and connectors are.
It's like they're giving us a blueprint.
I know, it's pretty detailed.
You can tell they put some thought into accessibility,
Yeah, all the ports are clearly labeled and spaced out.
which would make installation and maintenance much easier.
And there's that 12P Phoenix terminal we talked about earlier.
Right, that mysterious terminal.
What exactly is that for?
Well, it seems to offer even more connectivity options.
Like what?
It can handle power supply, RS-232 and RS-485 communication, and even GPIO.
GPIO? What's that?
It stands for General Purpose Input-Output.
Okay.
Basically, it's a way to connect and control all sorts of external devices and sensors.
So this display is more than just a screen.
Right, it's like a hub for interacting with a whole network of gadgets.
It's like the central command center.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's not forget about the actual display part of this device.
True, we've been so focused on the other features.
We know it's an 8-inch TFT LCD, but what else can we learn from the specs?
So the screen parameters section has all the details.
Okay, let's dive into that.
All right, first up, resolution.
That's important.
It's other 1,024 by 768 pixels.
Not super high res.
It's pretty standard for an 8-inch display.
Okay.
But for industrial applications, clarity of information is key.
Right, it's not about watching movies on this thing.
Exactly.
What else?
Viewing angle.
Ooh, that's interesting.
It's 85 degrees from all sides.
So you can see the screen clearly from pretty much any angle.
Yep. Important for things like kiosks or control panels.
Where people might be looking at it from different positions.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
They also list the color depth.
Okay.
16.7 million colors.
Yeah.
Pretty standard these days.
So it can reproduce a wide range of colors.
Might be important depending on the application.
And then there's brightness.
Yes, that's a key factor.
It says 300 CDMET.
That's pretty bright.
Yeah, brighter than my phone screen, I think.
Probably. It's designed for brightly lit environments.
Like a factory floor.
Or even outdoors.
A dim screen wouldn't be very useful in those situations.
Nope, not at all.
And lastly, we have the contrast ratio.
Which is 1,000.1.
Okay, refresh my memory. What's contrast ratio again?
It's basically the difference between the brightest white and the darkest black that the display can produce.
I see.
A higher ratio generally means better picture quality,
So you get those crisp images and text?
even in challenging lighting conditions.
Got it.
All right, we've covered dimensions, port layout, screen specs.
What else is there?
Well, there's this section called touch parameters.
Touchscreen.
It seems so.
Oh.
Some versions of this display come with a touchscreen,
Ah.
and they offer both capacitive touch and resistive touch.
Two different types of touchscreens.
Yeah, they have different pros and cons.
So what's the difference?
Capacitive touchscreens are like the ones on smartphones.
Oh,
They're
okay.
very responsive,
Yeah.
and they support multi-touch gestures.
I know.
They don't work well with gloves.
So not ideal for a factory setting where people might be wearing gloves.
Exactly. That's where resistive touchscreens come in.
Okay.
They're more pressure sensitive, and you can use them with gloves on.
Much more practical for industrial environments.
Absolutely.
And the capacitive touchscreen, it says it's a 10-point touch projection.
That's a lot of fingers.
It can track up to 10 fingers at once.
It's more about flexibility and responsiveness
Okay.
than actually using all 10 fingers.
Right.
It allows for complex gestures and smoother interaction.
And for the resistive touchscreen, it mentions you can use a fingertip or a stylus.
Again, it's about adapting to the environment.
Yeah.
A stylus can be more precise than a finger.
Especially if you're working with small buttons or icons.
Exactly.
So this display can be either a traditional screen or a touch screen
Yeah.
with 2 different touch technologies to choose from.
A lot of options.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
Okay, let's move on to product reliability parameters.
All right, the section about toughness.
We already know this thing is built to withstand some abuse.
But what other details can we find?
Well, they mention a relative humidity range of 95% non-condensing.
95%, that's pretty high.
It is.
But what's non-condensing?
It means the display can handle high humidity,
Okay.
as long as the moisture in the air doesn't actually turn into liquid water on the device.
So it's not waterproof.
Not in the sense that you can submerge it,
Right.
but it can handle humid environments.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then they list a bunch of standards and certifications.
Oh yeah, there's a whole list here.
IEC 600-68264 for vibration protection. IEC 600-68227 for impact protection.
What are those?
They're international standards that define specific tests for electronic devices.
Oh.
Basically, they ensure the device can survive in demanding environments.
So this display has passed all those tests.
It seems so.
Toughness certified.
And to top it off, they list even more certifications.
Let's see, CCC, CE, FCC, EMC, CB, and RoHS.
A whole alphabet soup of certifications.
What do they all mean? They prove the device meets certain safety and performance standards.
So it's not just tough, it's also safe and reliable.
Exactly, it's the whole package.
Now let's talk about the brains of this operation.
The hardware.
The spec sheet says it has a self-developed x86 architecture industrial motherboard.
That's interesting.
What does that mean exactly?
Sounds like they designed and manufactured the motherboard themselves.
Oh, so they didn't just buy one off the shelf.
Right, which suggests a high level of expertise and quality control.
And they specifically call it an industrial motherboard.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
What's the difference between that and a regular motherboard?
Industrial motherboards are designed for reliability and longevity in harsh conditions.
I see.
They often have features like extended temperature ranges
Okay.
and resistance to shocks and vibrations.
So it's not just the display that's rugged.
Right, the entire system is built to last.
That's impressive.
It is. Okay, what about the processor itself?
We know it's a quad-core Celeron J642HEL running at 2.0 gigahertz. Right, but what does that mean in terms of real-world performance?
Well, it's not going to be a gaming powerhouse,
Okay.
but it's more than enough for most industrial applications.
So things like data processing, control systems, specialized software.
Exactly.
It's not meant for general-purpose computing.
Right, and it's an embedded system designed for specific tasks.
Got it.
Now let's talk memory and storage.
All right, how much RAM does this thing have?
The standard configuration comes with 8 GB of LPDDR4 RAM.
LPDDR4, what's that?
It's a type of low-power RAM,
Oh, okay.
perfect for mobile devices and embedded systems.
So it helps with energy efficiency.
Exactly.
And you can upgrade to 16 GB if you need more.
That's right.
What about storage?
The base model comes with a 256 GB SSD.
A decent amount of space.
Should be plenty for most applications.
But they also offer options for larger SSDs
Uh-huh.
or even traditional hard drives.
So you can customize it based on your needs.
That's good. Flexibility is always nice.
Speaking of flexibility, let's talk about those connectivity options.
Oh, yeah. We can't forget about all those ports.
VGA, HDMI, LAN, USB, audio I/O, RS-232 COM, even a SIM card slot.
It's like a connectivity Swiss Army knife.
I know, right? It's got everything.
Let's break it down, starting with the video outputs.
Okay.
VGA and HDMI.
VDA is the older standard.
Is it still used?
It is, especially in industrial settings.
Okay. And HDMI is the newer one for high-definition video and audio.
And remember, the HDMI port on this display supports 4K output.
Right, which is a bit strange since the display itself isn't 4K.
Maybe they're anticipating users will want to connect it to a larger external display.
For presentations or something?
Could be.
Okay, what about networking?
2 LAN ports.
One for 1,000 Mbps and one for 100 Mbps.
Right, an unusual setup.
Any theories on why they did that?
My guess is redundancy. If one connection goes down, the other one can still work.
That makes sense.
Or maybe it's for connecting to different types of networks simultaneously.
Okay, one for a high-speed network and one for a slower one.
It's a possibility. And then there's the SIM card slot.
Yes, the wireless option.
So this display can connect to cellular networks.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
It is. Opens up a lot of possibilities.
Imagine using this display in remote locations.
Where there's no wired internet access.
It could be used for digital signage in rural areas.
Or mobile kiosks.
That's a good point.
It really expands the potential applications.
Okay, so we've covered video outputs, networking. What about those USB ports?
We've got both USB 2.0 and 3.0.
Two different versions.
USB 2.0 is the older standard.
Is it still relevant?
It is, for things like keyboards, mice, and printers.
Okay, and USB 3.0 is much faster.
Right. Better for transferring large files or connecting high bandwidth devices.
Like external hard drives.
Exactly.
So having both gives users flexibility.
That's the key.
What are the other ports?
Audio I/O, RS-232 COM, and that 12P Phoenix terminal.
Right, those ones.
Audio I/O lets you connect speakers or headphones.
Useful for kiosks or digital signage.
Where you need audio feedback.
RS-232 COM is a serial communication interface,
Hmm.
often used for connecting to older devices.
Okay.
And the 12P Phoenix terminal.
Right, that mysterious one.
It gives you even more options like power supply, RS-232 and RS-485 communication, and GPIO.
So it's really a versatile connector.
It is.
Now, the spec sheet also mentions software compatibility.
Oh yeah, that's important.
It claims to be compatible with 99% of industry software.
That's a bold claim.
It is, but what about that remaining 1%?
What kind of software doesn't it support?
Good question.
Unfortunately, the spec sheet doesn't give us any specifics.
So we're left to speculate.
It's possible that 1% refers to highly specialized software.
Used in niche industries?
Maybe.
Or maybe it's software that runs on operating systems this device doesn't support.
That's another possibility.
And speaking of operating systems, the spec sheet doesn't actually say which ones I is compatible with.
Oh, you're right.
Seems like a bit of an oversight.
It is. Even the most detailed spec sheet can't tell us everything.
True. It's always good to do your own research.
And confirm compatibility before making any assumptions.
Okay, so we've covered physical characteristics, screen parameters, hardware, connectivity, and software compatibility.
We've been through a lot.
Anything else we haven't explored yet?
Actually, there's one more section, features.
Features? Okay.
It's where they highlight the key selling points.
Okay, let's see what they emphasize.
It mentions a full aluminum alloy panel structure
Okay, sounds durable.
with an IP65 waterproof front panel
We already talked about that.
and an aluminum alloy rear cover with heat dissipation holes.
So it's designed for efficient cooling,
Important for a device that's going to be working hard.
especially in hot environments.
Exactly.
And they also highlight its low power consumption,
Always a plus.
especially in industrial settings where energy efficiency matters,
They also point out that it's designed for embedded installation
which we already figured out.
and supports connections to a variety of external devices.
That's basically a summary of what we've been talking about.
It is, but then they get more specific.
Oh, okay.
They mention applications like self-service terminals, vending machines, kiosks, parcel lockers.
So they are giving us some concrete examples.
It helps to understand the target market.
And it reinforces the idea that this is a versatile display.
That can be adapted to a wide range of applications.
Okay, so we've pretty much dissected this spec sheet from top to bottom.
I think we've squeezed all the information we can out of it.
We've learned a lot about this AB080W200-J6 embedded computer display.
It's a rugged, powerful, and surprisingly versatile device.
We've explored its physical characteristics, its processing capabilities, its connectivity options.
And its potential applications in a variety of industries.
But even more importantly, I think we've shown that even a technical document like a spec sheet,
Can be a source of fascination and insight,
if you approach it with curiosity,
and a willingness to dig deeper,
absolutely, it's all about asking questions.
and looking beyond the surface.
Well, wait a second, there's one more thing. Remember those mentions of Wi-Fi support and dual band capability?
Ah, yes, we haven't delved into that yet.
And it raises some interesting questions about the wireless capabilities of this device.
We definitely need to explore that further,
So stay tuned for part 3 of this episode.
where we'll unravel the mysteries of the AB080W200-J6's Wi-Fi prowess.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about this AB080W200-J6 display.
We have.
But there's one thing we haven't really explored yet.
What's that?
Wi-Fi.
Ah, yes, Wi-Fi.
It's mentioned in the spec sheet,
It is.
but we haven't really dived into what that means for this display.
True, it's an important feature, especially in industrial settings.
Right, where cables can be a hassle.
Exactly. Wireless connectivity can be a game changer.
So let's take a closer look at what the spec sheet says about Wi-Fi.
Okay.
It says, support 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz dual band Wi-Fi.
Dual band.
Yeah, what's the big deal about dual band Wi-Fi?
Well, it means the display can operate on 2 different frequency bands.
2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz.
Right. Think of them as two separate lanes on a highway.
Okay, I like that analogy.
The 2.4 gigahertz band is like the older, more crowded lane.
Lots of traffic.
Yeah, it's used by a ton of devices.
Microwaves, Bluetooth, all sorts of things.
Exactly. So you can get interference and slower speeds.
Like driving through a busy city?
That's a good way to put it.
What about 5 gigahertz?
5 gigahertz is like the newer, less congested expressway.
Okay, so faster speeds.
But the range is shorter.
So it's a trade-off.
It is,
Yeah.
but having both options gives you flexibility.
You can choose the best band for your environment.
Exactly.
Now, there's another detail I noticed. It says 2 Wi-Fi antenna.
Cool antennas.
What's the point of having 2 antennas?
Think of it like having 2 ears instead of 1.
Okay.
You can hear better, right?
Yeah.
Same idea here. 2 antennas allow the display to pick up a stronger signal.
And reduce interference.
It's a technique called spatial diversity.
So even in a noisy environment with lots of other wireless devices,
This display should maintain a solid connection.
reliability is key, especially in industrial settings.
Absolutely, you don't want a critical piece of equipment losing its connection.
Right, that could cause all sorts of problems.
So dual band Wi-Fi plus 2 antennas,
Equals a super robust and reliable wireless connection.
like a backup generator for your internet.
I love that analogy.
It paints a good picture.
But let's step back for a second.
Okay.
What does having Wi-Fi actually enable for this display?
Well, for one, it allows for remote monitoring and control,
You mean you could access the display from anywhere?
as long as you have an internet connection.
That's amazing. You could monitor a factory floor from across the world.
It opens up a lot of possibilities.
What else?
It also enables data collection and analysis.
How so?
You could collect data from sensors connected to the display
Okay.
and send it to a central server.
We're talking of the industrial Internet of Things here.
Exactly. Devices talking to each other, sharing data to improve efficiency.
And with cloud computing,
You could even store and analyze all that data in the cloud.
making it accessible from anywhere.
It's a powerful combination.
So this little Wi-Fi feature,
It's not so little when you think about it.
it transforms this display into a hub for remote management, data-driven decisions, and even cloud integration.
It's a game changer.
Well, there you have it, folks.
We've reached the end of our deep dive.
Into the AB0A0W200-J6 embedded computer display.
We started with just the spec sheet
But we uncovered so much information.
about this rugged, powerful, and versatile device
We explored its physical design, its processing capabilities, its connectivity.
and its potential applications.
But I think the most important takeaway
Is that even a technical document like this?
can be a source of fascination and insight,
If you approach it with curiosity.
and a willingness to ask questions.
Exactly. Never stop exploring.
And never underestimate the power of a good spec sheet.
You never know what you might discover.
Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.